Hello, and welcome to another Deltarune Pokemon video. This is the third video in a series where I make Fakemon based on Deltarune characters. So far, I've been able to make Fakemon using these 6 characters, as well as some separate designs for each of the Lightner's Dark World appearances. But today, we're going to be taking a look at the main chapter bosses and seeing how I can turn them into marketable little pocket monsters. There will be spoilers ahead for all chapters. I think you could probably infer that, but just in case. Now let's get to the drawing! Truth be told, I jumped back and forth between these designs a lot while working on them, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to be talking about them in the order they appear in the game. And with Chapter 1, we have the Spade King. My starting sketches are pretty similar to his in-game design, just a little sillier looking. One complicating factor for this was Guzzlord. It's not extremely similar to King, but between the stomach mouth, mouth tongue, spikes, and crown, I kept having to think about how to differentiate them from each other more. So I decided to try playing up the chain tongue as a weapon, and the spade theme. I could feel myself getting frustrated while working on one of these sketch passes, so I ended up redrawing him in a different pose and slightly tweaked his proportions to be more rounded, with a smaller head and broader shoulders. It's not a super big difference, but I think it works better overall. Instead of the mantle, I gave him those pauldron looking things and a more spade-shaped cloak. I guess I'll explain a little bit about my process while we're here, since I don't think I've talked about it since maybe the first video on my channel. If you don't want to hear about process stuff, I'll put a timecode on screen so you can skip to the finished design. For materials, I use the program Procreate and brushes from Subjectively's Poketo brush pack. I'm not going for a completely accurate style from any of the official Pokemon art, but I do enjoy using these brushes, and I've even found them helpful for some of my non-Pokemon related stuff. Anyway, I usually start by gathering references, whether that's Pokemon that have similar features or aesthetics to the one I'm trying to make, or real-life inspiration. Then I move on with about 2 sketches, with the first more loose one helping me to figure out the pose, and then a more refined one on top of that to get all the details down. After that, I use the refined sketch to figure out the colors, and sometimes shading if I need to achieve a specific effect. Next I add line art, which I think always takes me the longest amount of time. Last is coloring and then shading. I use this brush from the pack for shadows. It has a slight transparent edge that you can use to create transitions between values, but to be honest, I just draw this on manually. Then I use this softer texture brush to add highlights. And that's pretty much my complete process for artwork. Now let's check out our King Fakemon. This is Despade from Despot, Despair, and Spade. It evolves from Lancer, the Lancer Fakemon I made in the previous vid. It is dark and fighting. Despade rules its territory as if it were its kingdom. It spares no effort in destroying anything that threatens its power. The shiny turns that nice purple based on the exterior of Card Castle. Moving on to Queen. I started out trying to sketch Queen and her throne before switching to a standing pose. I didn't have a strong idea of what I wanted, just that I was envisioning a very sleek and futuristic silhouette for her design, so I ended up streamlining a lot of her pointier shapes in the sketch. I also looked at Paradox Pokemon as inspiration, although she didn't end up having the same design conventions as them. At this point I started to dislike the standing pose, so I resketched her to be hovering with her legs crossed. I also remembered her room has these giant speakers, so I thought it would be funny to put some on the side of her head, and a good way to fill space. It's kinda sweet Captain Cakes. I probably should have tried working in some inspiration from actual laptops, but in the moment I felt like it would conflict too much with the stylized robot look I had going on, so that didn't come to pass. While I'm talking about things I dislike, I'm not really a fan of how her mouth turned out. I think I could have worked out something better than just separating her lower jaw like that, but at least it's a pretty small part of her overall design. For her colors, I kept it pretty close to the original, although I shifted everything to be a bit more cyan. I really liked how the pink and orange fire colors looked, but I ended up changing them to a more battery acid shade of green. You might have noticed that the green diamond is another divergence from her original design, and that's because it's a special tool that will help us later. This is Solvern from Solve and Solverain, the digital Pokemon. It is electric and steel. It is a being of such advanced technology that it has developed its own method to control other Pokemon. Solvern assumes it knows best in most situations. The shiny is based on this concept art for Queen. I always thought Medusa Queen was super cool, but I still really loved the goofier alien Queen we got in the end. Oh hey, what's this button? I was debating whether Mega Evolution or Gigantamax worked better for Giga Queen, but Gigantamax won out because she's literally gigantic. I was pretty nervous about drawing her in the G-Max key art angle since I don't draw things with extreme perspective a lot. So I tried to keep my first sketch very loose and rough so that I could adjust it as I went. This is also where the diamond on her chest comes in. I noticed it on Giga Queen before I started drawing either of them. Since I didn't give her battery acid glass in her normal form, she got it in this one. To make it feel less random, I also added those acid gauge things on her arms and legs. One of her attacks isn't acid spray, so I think it works. Another attack I'm referencing is her rocket attack. Unfortunately, I could not squeeze in the baseball one. Her colors are sampled directly from the sprite, but I had a harder time with the shading. I figured it out eventually after looking really hard at various G-Max art, specifically Grimmsnarl and Meowth. I hate to admit it because it makes me feel less creative, but she kinda looks like Mettaton.
Oh, yes.
Here's the finished art. She's definitely not the most cohesive of my Pokemon, but I had a lot of fun drawing her and trying out a G-Max design. I said I was nervous about drawing Giga Queen, and I meant that, but I was also dreading designing Tenna. I couldn't just make him a TV head or a robot because I already did that with Queen. And also I wasn't sure if I wanted to translate his 3D visuals in some way. So to help me visualize better, I did some quick sketches on one of my notebooks. As you can see, they incorporate some features of the early Tenna designs Toby Fox shared on his social media accounts, like the extra arms and the abdomen. I like the ant direction since it gave me something to work with other than TV head. And there's even some real-world connection. I mean, the reason a Deltarune is probably for the ant Tenna pun, but also some species of ants try to nest in electronics, such as the crazy ants Neolandaria fulva. So it works out. Now that I had those simple sketches, I just had to execute those ideas digitally. I went back and forth a lot this segment about if I should give him a nose, since most bug Pokemon don't have noses, with some exceptions. I tried to commit to the nose because while it felt more like a bug Pokemon to me without it, it also didn't feel like Tenna. Something I've become even more aware of while making this video is that proportions are really important to Pokemon designs. That applies to character design in general, but I tend to forget about them more when I'm just drawing humans. Since a lot of these designs are humanoid, I try to rely a lot on proportion and abstraction to make them look less human. Maybe too much abstraction because I realized it gave Tenna and Queen very similar looking legs. This is Antilog, the Scream Pokemon, from Ant and Analog. It is electric and bug type. This Pokemon thrives on being the center of attention. It can change in size depending on how much energy it absorbs. The shiny is based on Tenna's Light World sprite, although the color difference is probably just lighting, because everything in the Dreamer house has that golden tint. We finally arrived at Chapter 4. Before we go to the Titan, I've got some weird little freaks to show you. I guess these are technically pre-evolutions, but it's kinda up in the air since I didn't make sheets for them. This is the designated boss video, and I wanted to focus more energy on that, and I have way more fun drawing than I do formatting info sheets. There's actually quite a few Titan spawn forms, but I narrowed it down to just these ones that I thought would work best as an evolutionary line. The smaller one is based on the Titan spawn, and the second one is a mashup of this Titan spawn and the more centipede looking ones. I added these fissures to both of them to incorporate some features I plan to have on the Titan, and some wings on the second one for the same reason. Now for the actual Titan. GGDG's concept art was a great starting point for this, specifically the sketch on the left. I like the visual of a Titan pulling itself up from the ground, so I combined that idea with the stone pillar it hatches from. It also got a lot of eye motifs on its body, and of course, the ball of wings. Another idea I had for the Titan spawn was that this bigger form could be the schooling version of them. Although that doesn't fit with the actual lore as well, and this design would probably have to change a lot to look more like an actual school form. The shiny for both this and the Titan spawn Fakemon are based on the bright red from this Titan spawn, and the dynamic border during the Titan boss fight. This is Fun Titan, the roaring Pokemon. Darkness pours from every crack in its body. Its only instincts are destruction and survival. It is a pure dark type. Also, speaking of dark types, I felt like the series was accumulating too many of them, and as I continue it will probably just get worse, so I decided to retroactively change Suzeil's typing to fighting. Type balance doesn't really matter since I'm not making a region out of this, but it matters to me, okay? We've officially reached the end of the video. I'm actually going to be on vacation when this video goes up, so I'll be pushing the final video in the series back by about a week. And hopefully the next chapter won't drop before this is scheduled to publish. It's not out yet, right? Right? Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Saturday.